And we're now heading to South America, and I'm delighted to be joined by more or less half the South American team. I've got half the South America here on the podcast this week. We've got two regulars and one debut. Marcus Watts, the area manager for Brazil, Scott Christensen, South America area manager, and Samuel Vasquez, who is our Colombian editor. Samuel, first of all, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's great to finally have you on. How are you looking forward to Colombia at the World Cup?
Hello, Stefan. Yeah, it's an incredible opportunity to Colombia because we didn't play the last World Cup in Qatar. So yeah, we hope to have a good presentation and maybe go to the semifinal. Maybe.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Marcus, I won't ask you too many questions about Brazil because it was maybe a bit of a hiccup at the start of the tournament. And as a Scot, I'm not actually sure if I'm glad. I think I would have preferred Brazil picked up all 3 points and smashed Morocco. But are you at least enjoying it somewhat?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a good World Cup so far, and let's see, it's an interesting start for the group, and everyone has chances, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. And Scott, I think awkwardly this podcast goes out a few hours after Argentina's first game. So I don't know if we want to if we just want to pretend that Argentina won, Argentina lost, or but in general, how are you feeling about Argentina at the World Cup? Assuming magically we know what's happened, even though we're recording before the result.
Yeah, I mean, I think Argentina is going to have a good World Cup. We are not as solid candidates as in the last one, I think, because it's basically the same team, but 4 years older. We have some players that came up into the team, like Nico Paz or the one we're going to talk about, Valentin Barco, as they are like young talents. But I mean, we're a mix of experience, some few young talents, and a team that already knows how to play these competitions. So yeah, I expect Argentina to do a good performance.
Yeah, of course. And of course, there's always Lionel Messi as well, which always makes for a good tournament. But we're not here to talk about Messi. We're here to talk about players that people maybe don't know about around the world, and we want to shine a slight light on them. And we've got 4 players in particular from South America, from many of the fantastic nations in that part of the world. And Scott, I'm going to come back to you first, because the first player on this name on our list is Joel Ordóñez. Ordonez, apologies, the Ecuadorian central defender. Now, he plays in Belgium and he's been there for quite some time. His market value has been skyrocketing since he made a move to Club Brugge. And usually we would have Bart on the show, but we had him on last week and I thought I'll give him a break. We've been relying on him a lot recently. But obviously you're in South America and I'm sure you've seen plenty of Ecuador and Ordonez before he maybe moved to Belgium. So what have you made from him in particular? And if I'm not mistaken, he's a key player to a team that are very good defensively, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, Ecuador, it's kind of has a rock solid defense because William Pacho, Pierre Capié, Moises Caicedo, and now Joel Ordóñez is like the 4th main man in their defense. I mean, even though Caicedo is a midfielder, obviously. But yeah, they are all players from the youth academy from Independiente del Valle, which I think is at the moment, if not the best, one of the best in South America, because the mentioned players all came from that team, so they are like the foundation of Ecuador. And yeah, Ordóñez he's been really good. He's kind of a similar player to William Pacho, as he's strong physical center back. He's good playing from behind. He's good in aerial duels and on one-on-one situations. And yeah, he came to Belgium on 2022, if I'm not wrong. But he went to play for the reserve team in the 2nd division, and eventually, like a year and a half later or so, he became a regular in the first team, and he's now doing really good. He was actually going to be sold to Marseille last summer, but Al Hilal with the Saudi money came in and kind of got in the way of the negotiations. So as Ordóñez didn't want to go to Saudi Arabia, he ended up staying at Belgium kind of with some tensions, but I'm quite sure that the guy will be playing in one of the top 5 leagues sooner than later.
Yeah, that was my next question, actually, with regards to his future, because, we expect him to obviously perform well. He did well in the first game, even though Ecuador lost 1-0. He's been heavily linked to Liverpool, Tottenham, Juventus, Chelsea, and fans of those clubs will be delighted to hear you compare him to William Pacho, who's obviously done very well at the very highest level. Do you think he's already ready to play at that level? Or do you think he maybe has to stay at Club Brugge for a couple more years to develop further, as he's only 22 years old?
I think it's at the exact point to go to one of the top 5 leagues. Like, he's still young and physically available to do everything. And he's already like kind of a mature player. He's won like 4 titles in Belgium. He's playing in the national team as a regular starter. He's kind of an experienced player. So yeah, I see him, as I said before, I see him in one of the top 5 leagues sooner than later.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll come to you, Simon, with player number 2, which is Gustavo Puerta for Colombia. For anyone who maybe hasn't had a chance to watch him, what type of player do you think he is, and how important is he to this Colombian team at the World Cup?
Yeah, Gustavo Puerta is the flag of our new generation. So Nestor Lorenzo, the head coach, has to show him during the World Cup. We have the third oldest national team in the tournament, but Puerta is our youngest player. So we have to promote his talent because, yeah, it's the golden generation beginning for our country. Currently, he is playing in Racing Santander. There are some European teams that want to sing Gustavo Puerta in this transfer window: Villarreal, Real Betis, Bologna, Lazio, and Porto. And Racing is asking for a 10 million transfer. But I think that after the World Cup, that fee could grow to 15 or 18 million because his potential is incredible. And the World Cup is the perfect opportunity to have an important transfer of a youngest Colombian player in this World Cup. Puerta is a midfielder, and he have a very incredible potential, and he can play above players like Richard Rios or Jefferson Lerma. Could be interesting to see Gustavo Puerta getting out these reference or Colombian idols in this World Cup.
Yeah, I find whenever I think of young players announcing themselves at the World Cup, the player that always comes to mind is James Rodriguez. I don't know why. Maybe I don't know if it's fair because I'm sure people in Colombia and elsewhere know all about him, but I remember in that World Cup he did so well, moves to Real Madrid, and I still see people walking around the United Kingdom in Colombia tops with James Rodriguez on the back. Is there any kind of, I don't know, cultural expectation on young players from Colombia to go to the World Cup, announce themselves, and prove that they're good enough to play? Because as you said, he's playing for Racing Santander, moving down to La Liga 2. Do you think this is an opportunity for him to prove I'm better than that? I can go to a Villarreal, a Betis, or a Bologna, or maybe even a bigger club, depending on how he does at the World Cup.
Yeah, we didn't play the last World Cup in Qatar, so we didn't have a new generation to the world. I think that Gustavo Puerta is our wonder kid, so we have to improve this talent and make like a new James Rodriguez. Obviously, Gustavo Puerta is a different player, but yeah, I think that with this interest clubs, we have to have a similar case in the transfer window. Obviously, the fee is lowest, but I think that it's important transfer for the Colombian context after the World Cup.
Yeah, very, very interesting player. I'm really excited to see how he does when Colombia start kicking off at this World Cup. And Marcus, I'll come to you in Brazil, obviously one of the biggest nations, well, undoubtedly the most successful nation at the World Cup. They had a slight hiccup, obviously, against Morocco, but we want to touch on one player who didn't get an opportunity to play in that game, and that was, of course, Rayan. People in England obviously know all about him. People in Bournemouth know all about him, but maybe for folk who don't watch the Premier League, people who don't know Brazilian football, how special is this young player and how excited are you to see him at the World Cup?
Yeah, I mean, I think the word for Rayan is dynamic. He's been amazing for Vasco throughout his career there. He's played for the academy in Vasco. He was born and raised in Rio. Even his father played for Vasco, so he's very tied up to the club. And yeah, I mean, ever since the beginning of his career, he felt like a different kind of player. He's very explosive. He's that kind of fast, skilled winger that can sometimes play in a role similar to a number 9. I wouldn't say he's a proper number 9, but something that if he needs to play in a more central role, he can definitely. And he really made his path into the World Cup. He was surprisingly good for Bournemouth since the beginning. He's obviously a big part of the almost Champions League qualification campaign, and obviously they got a spot in Europa League, which is massive for the club. And he's been shining straight away in the Premier League. He got to the Premier League, he felt no pressure. He really plays football like he's playing in his backyard. So you see, he's that kind of special player who doesn't really struggle in pressure. He really knows how he wants to play his game, and he knows how to develop. You can often see Rayan being that sort of player that will come back and help his defense. He will try to do everything he can to help his club and his team. And he's sort of the same player for Brazil. He didn't have that many opportunities so far, but every single minute he plays, every single minute he's on the field with a Brazilian shirt, he tries to give his max. He tries to do everything he can to help the team. And he already scored for Brazil in the last game against, I think it was 2 games before the World Cup. Brazil played Panama in Maracanã. He scored a brilliant goal for Brazil, and I mean, he's on the right path to become a Brazil regular, a Brazil starter in the future. I mean, Brazil has been struggling at this World Cup already. It was a bit of a disappointing start against Morocco. I don't think the result it's what's most disappointing. I think the way Brazil played is what's more concerning for fans here. And we've been struggling at creating players. We've been struggling on the attack, and we should probably change some things in the next couple of games. And you might see Rayan get a few minutes against Haiti in the next match, and maybe you could see him play against Scotland as well. So, I mean, the path for him is set. I think he should be one of these players to get a few minutes in the next few games, and who knows, he might become a starter during the World Cup. But he's definitely one name for the Brazilian future. I wouldn't be surprised to see Rayan as the starting right winger for the next few years for Brazil.
Yeah, that was more or less my next question, actually. Having watched that opening game against Morocco, I saw a lot of criticism of Thiago, a lot of criticism of Paqueta. Obviously, both central midfielders were taken off. And then Ancelotti went, instead of bringing on someone like Rayan, he brings on Luis Enrique, who's a similar style player, similar position. Do you think Brazil fans are maybe frustrated that Ancelotti's maybe a little more conservative and maybe should have been a little more experimental or put more faith in Rayan? Or do you think he's just maybe protecting him and waiting for the right opportunity to introduce him to the squad as you say, as a starter, as a future star player?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Ancelotti's been criticized a lot here in Brazil about not using some of his most talented players like Endrick, like Rayan. But I think if one person in the world knows how to deal with football players, is Carlo Ancelotti. We can trust him. And I mean, the players are very young. I know we all expect to see Lamine Yamal, Hendricks, Ryans playing in the World Cup and giving their best, but you have to realize it's like an insane amount of pressure on a player that young. You can't just throw him in the pitch and say, okay, go on and play football and nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to come back and backlash on you. If a player that young plays in a World Cup and he plays badly, it could be massive to his career. It could be very negative for his future. So I think Ancelotti is aware of that, and he's trying to protect his players, and he's giving more experienced players some starting chances, some chances earlier in the tournament. But I believe that against sides like Haiti, Brazil should win quite easily, and we could see these young players play a few minutes. So it wouldn't be surprising to see Hendrick and Haya play a few minutes against Haiti, and who knows, if they do well, they can play against Scotland as well in more challenging matches for the World Cup to come. But it's a mix of protecting his players and giving more experienced players some game time as well.
Yeah. From a personal point of view, I hope he doesn't build up to the Scotland game and do tremendously well. It'd be nice if he waited till after that match. But either way, I do wish him luck, obviously, in this tournament. But Scott, we have to move on to the fourth and final player, and that's, of course, Valentin Barco, the Argentinian midfielder. I find him really, really interesting, a player for Strasbourg. We've seen his market value rise to 40 million euros this season in Ligue 1. What kind of player can we expect to see from him at the World Cup? How important will he be for Argentina? And I guess just finally, like when I look at that midfield options for Argentina, you've got some big names there. You know, you've got Palacios, you've got De Paul, you've got Mac Allister, Enzo Fernandez. Maybe some household names and big names, but maybe some players who look a little tired, maybe obviously getting older. Is there an opportunity here for someone like Barco commit to maybe step into that team and become, a future star for Argentina?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, I think Argentina's midfield is one of the best in the world, in my opinion, because, as you said, Enzo or Mac Allister or De Paul, when they play together, they are really strong. And yeah, so it's hard for him to get a place in the starting 11. But I absolutely see him in the future as one of the three midfielders in Argentina, because he's kind of similar to what De Paul does, like a very intense player, aggressive, but also skilled. So I don't see him maybe in the near future like as a regular starter, but eventually he'll end up being one. Yeah, I mean, for anyone who doesn't know him very much, yeah, he's a left-footed, very skilled. He has great vision. He has personality. He's aggressive. He used to play as a left back actually, and was too skilled. It's kind of what happened with Gareth Bale, that he was a left back, but he was too skilled to play there and moved upwards. So yeah, Barco, instead of going like to the front three, he's now playing on the midfield, but he's a polyfunctional player because he can play on the left wing or in the left midfield or as a central midfielder. So he's he's one of those players that wants to play. So he'll play on every position or wherever the coach wants him, just to get inside the pitch. So yeah, I mean, not maybe now in this World Cup he'll be a substitute, but it's kind of one of the one that gets more hopes from the Argentinians because of his personality and his style.
Yeah, I was struck with maybe some parallels to Mac Allister in the sense that the last World Cup he kind of emerged as this tremendous player for Argentina, and then somewhat off the back of his performances at the World Cup earned him that move to Liverpool. A former Brighton player, and now we've got another former Brighton player in midfield who's on the cusp of the first team for Argentina in a World Cup they're obviously expected to challenge for. Am I being silly to draw those parallels, or do you think this could be a World Cup where if he does get into that starting team, he performs well like Mac Allister, we could see something similar where some of the biggest clubs around the world are suddenly paying attention to him?
I mean, he's already going to Chelsea before this World Cup, so he already got the attention from a top team. But I think it's a bit harder for him than for Mac Allister, because Mac Allister now has the advantage that, I mean, the three starting midfielders are all World Cup champions, so it's really hard to put one of them in the bench. So he really, really, really has to perform to like make Scaloni decide to get one of those three out of the starting team. But yeah, I mean, I think that him and Nico Paz for sure will be getting several minutes in the national team during this World Cup. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a parallel to Mac Allister because of the fact that he was at Brighton and they both played at Boca Juniors before. And yeah, it's kind of they even kind of look similar. But yeah, I don't think he'll become a starting player during the World Cup, to be honest, because as I said before, the three that are playing are like big names.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't realize that he was on his way to Chelsea. I know he joined Strasbourg. I know it's usually assumed that they move on to Chelsea, but I wasn't aware that it's already confirmed. So I guess I could just take that question back. But that's still fascinating. Even if he doesn't get a started role, I'm sure Chelsea fans will be very excited to see how he does, and Argentina fans, of course, if he does come on it and play in that game. Well, guys, that's all the time we have for now, but thank you so much for all coming on the show. Samuel, thank you for making your debut on the podcast. And Marcus and Scott, your insight is always invaluable and very, very appreciated. So I guess I can let you guys go and enjoy the World Cup.